And I remember when it happened to me, I was younger than David, and I was on a trip and trying to look at a road atlas after dark. And I'm like, they make this print smaller now. That's what I was telling myself, but I soon realized the real cause. And I'm thinking, wow, I was 17 when that guy was born. Well, I was a month before I turned 18, just graduating from high school. And so if he's reading glasses, I'm getting old. How are you today? Give you a little update. Some of you know my sister, Brita, and I are very close, and we talk on the telephone at least once a week. And she's my ministry consultant. She's always like, so what are you preaching about? She calls me a lot on Saturday nights. She didn't call me last night. But last Sunday we were talking in the evening, and she's like, so what did you preach about today? And she doesn't just want a general, she wants a line-by-line description. And so I give it to her. And then when it's all done, she said, well, next time, throw this in here. And she's got really great things to add. She's very insightful. So I said, Brita, you'd never believe the last time I preached 2 weeks ago, I said, I talked about all the people that you used to invite to church. And I remember I told you this story about this gal she invited named Barbara Floyd, who got saved and came to our house afterwards and was running around the house in the middle of it. Well, I told her, she said, yeah, I remember that. And she said, it's very, very strange that you would mention that because that happened 50 years ago. And she said, you'd never believe this, but yesterday, Barbara Floyd called me. Barbara Floyd called me after 50 years, and you would do it. And it happened the day after. You tell me, the day before you told me about this. And she said, Barbara Floyd had been trying to find me for about 3 years. And she said, I'm not on Facebook. And she said, finally, she started doing a lot of research, and she found my husband on Facebook, she said, and she asked him, is your wife's name Brita? And she said, yes. So she called her up to thank her for telling her about Jesus and how it changed her life. And she currently is, her husband is an Assembly of God pastor in Springfield, Missouri. And they spent a long time on the telephone catching up. So I just wanted to give you that update. So I was thinking about that this morning, and my wife and I, as we're getting ready for church today, I looked in the closet and I got out this jacket that she had bought me 3 years ago. Look at that. And she's like, you can't wear that today. It's like corduroy. You can't wear that till after Labor Day. And I'm like, I'm wearing it. I've shrunk into it, so I'm wearing it. Thank you, honey. And so I had to rip out the pockets, because it was brand new. So thank you, baby. Turn with me I'm in a rambling mood, so I better shut up. Turn with me to Philippians 4. I'm not going to read it right now, but keep your thumb in there, and we'll read it after a while. I want to talk to you this morning, in the next 30 minutes or so. Oh, by the way, I forgot my glasses today. But I can see, I've written a couple of things down. I can see well enough to see that. I'm going to borrow it. I'm a 1.75. What are you?
Why don't I just grab something you want to try?
No, I'm good. I want to talk to you today about the power of your personal ability to decide. And I want you to say that with me. The power of your personal ability to decide. There's a famous test that was done by a professor at Stanford University in 1972. I've read about it and heard about it many times. I looked it up yesterday and learned all the details about it, but it's called the marshmallow test. Maybe you've heard of the marshmallow test. And it's a test that a professor at Stanford University, a psychology professor, administered to preschoolers, testing their ability to delay gratification. And the test went something like this. He'd put a big, huge marshmallow in front of them on this little test. He said, "Do you like marshmallows?" And yeah, they liked them. "You like the big ones better, the little ones better?" "Do you like the big ones better?" He'd say, "Well, you can have this marshmallow. I'm going to walk out of the room, and feel free to eat this marshmallow. But if you don't eat it, when I come back, if it's still there, I'm going to give you 2. You're going to get double the marshmallows." And so that was the marshmallow test. And when he walked out of the room, the video camera would show kids looking around, and then a good majority of them ate the marshmallow, and they didn't get another one. But some of the kids were able to decide that they wanted 2 marshmallows and that they would wait. Now, I don't know which one of those you would be, but as he followed this study group years later, the children who could make that decision and say they were not going to eat that marshmallow and they're going to wait and get 2, those children later in life were more successful in a lot of areas. And this was an innate decision-making ability that is built right into us, that begins showing itself at a very young age. Did you know that God has put into you a powerful thing, and that is your personal ability to decide? In Genesis chapter 1, when you read about the 6 days of creation, God saved the best for last. You know, in the early days, He created the sun and the moon and the stars and the rocks and the oceans and the light and the darkness and all these things. And then the very last thing He did was create man and woman, humankind. And He made, this was His ultimate creation, the crown jewel of His creation, humankind, that He built within you a powerful ability to decide. He made you different than the animals. He built this into you to decide either for good or bad. Some of you have already in this day been faced with decisions to make, whether good or bad, that we are not automatons. We are not little robots. We are not little people controlled by strings where God pulls our little strings and our whole life is predetermined. But God delights in us. God delights in us, His crowning creation, and He brags about you. Or He would like to brag about you the way we do about our grandkids and our kids, and we delight in them. And so God was talking to one of His lost sons many years ago, named Lucifer, and as they conferred, He said, "Have you considered my servant Job? This guy Job, he's really something special. He's really pretty cool." And Lucifer starts telling God about, well, he's only that way because you build a hedge around him. But if I touched him, if I took certain things away from him, he would curse you to your face. And so God removed the hedge of perfection, and Job had made that decision that no matter what came his way, he was going to serve God. He was going to decide to do right. A number of years ago, I had the chance to meet a famous person. At the time, Brenda was the president of the Missouri Group Psychotherapy Society, and she was finishing work up on her PhD in marriage and family therapy. And she had invited this world-renowned group psychotherapist named Irvin Yalom. And I actually read a number of his books. And I wish I could tell you that what I'm about to say I'd gotten out of some pulpit Bible commentary or something, but I got it right out of a book by Irvin Yalom, the group psychotherapist, who incidentally was an atheist. But even sometimes we can learn good things from atheists. And he had a little thing in there about making decisions. And I had never known this before, but he said the word decide is a powerful word. That he talked about trees. How many know there are two types of trees? Pine trees and such are what we call coniferous. They're evergreen. They stay that way. But other trees are called deciduous trees. Deciduous trees lose their leaves. The leaves die and they fall off. And he said the root word there is the word decide, deciduous. And he said in a decision, something dies. And he talked about other words that decide was in. And it's like in genocide, in homicide, and suicide, something dies in all of those areas. And when you make a decision, something dies. All the possibilities and all the little roads that you could have gone down your life, like Robert Frost said, 2 roads diverged into a wood. And I took the one less traveled. And that has made all the difference. Now, Yogi Berra, the catcher for the New York Yankees for all those years, he was the commencement speaker at our daughter Elizabeth's graduation from St. Louis University a number of years ago. And some of you, anybody know what a yogiism is? Yogi, he says all kinds of stuff like, it's not over till it's over. And Yogi, when it came to decision making, he said, when you get to a fork in the road, take it. And so when he was giving this commencement address at St. Louis University, we were all laughing hysterically because he is an amazing speaker. And but he was talking about the power of decisions. God has put within you a power of personal ability to decide. He doesn't force you to do it. He lets you decide which way to go. And you know, God delights in watching you make mistakes and recover from them. One of the worst things you can do to your children is to always bail them out. Always say, I'll fix that for you. I'll show you how to open that. I'll show you how to put this together. No, just let them do it. Let them do it. And God does that to us because He delights in watching us make our decisions. And we hear these things about the perfect will of God. God knows that we can't do His perfect will. And so He has given us all of these things to deal with life and make mistakes and recover from them. And that's why the Word of God says that His mercies are new every morning. Every day God hits the reset button. And He's like, that's the reason for dawn and dark and light. Every day is a new day. A new start. A new place to demonstrate your personal ability to decide. And I look back on my life. I was just meditating on this last night about some of the decisions I've made in life and how it might have been different. I hadn't thought of this in many, many years, and Brenda will remember this. Her and I were on the way to a prayer meeting out in the sticks somewhere out in St. Charles County, and we were running late, and I hate to be late. We were running late. And so I decided to speed a little. I made that decision. I made the decision to speed. And we were out in the boonies speeding, and you couldn't really see the road too well, and there was a dip in the road that went down like that. And our car literally went airborne when we hit that thing. And then the road veered, and so the car was airborne. And next thing I knew, I took down a mailbox. And the front of the car was smashed. And, I'm usually do you remember that, Brenda? Oh, you were nursing Victoria. You weren't supposed to tell that. This kid was supposed to be in the car seat. So we didn't follow safety procedures, and I'd made the decision to speed. And so we're out there in the boonies, and I'm feeling guilty because the car was still drivable. It was messed up a little bit, but was drivable. But I'm not a thief or dishonest person. So I walked to the house across the street to tell the farmer out there that I messed up his mailbox, and actually the car was stuck in the ditch. So he came out and looked at it. I said, I'm really sorry about your mailbox. I'll pay you for it. And I had a bunch of cash on me, and I was getting ready to pay him. But he said, I'm going to go get my tractor. He went and got his tractor, pulled me out of the ditch, didn't have to call AAA. Those days, we didn't have cell phones or anything. We couldn't call AAA. He pulled us out of the ditch. And I said, how much do I owe you for the tow in the mailbox? He said, he was an older man. He said, son, you don't owe me a penny. And I said, but how about if I just give you some money anyway? He said, well, if you want to do that, you can. And I think I gave him $50 or $100 at the time, about all the cash I had on me. And then when he folded that money and put it in his pocket, there was a twinkle in his eye. And he said, son, you wouldn't believe this, but that mailbox has made me a lot of money over the years. He said, I'll bet in the last 10 years I put $2,000 in my pocket. So drive more carefully, son. And I don't know where that came from, but last night I was thinking about this. What if I had made the decision to be late and to drive more carefully? I wonder if I'd have met somebody at that prayer meeting that we were on the way to, and maybe somebody that could have helped change the direction of our lives. God looks at us, and He's not just into destiny, because God doesn't say, if you don't do this, my perfect will, if you end up going to this city instead of this city, your life is forever messed up. No, God takes the way you are today and accepts your life today regardless of all of the mistakes you had, and He honors the power of your personal ability to decide. It's an astounding power. It goes beyond anything that we could imagine. It shapes our careers. It shapes our friendships and our houses and our destinies. But there are some things that affect our lives so much in this personal ability to decide. But nowhere is that power more demonstrative than in our ability to decide what we think about. And let's read from Philippians chapter 4 and verse 8, where the Paul says, "Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things." Say, "Well, I can't help it. This just happened," or many of us act as if we act as if we just react to whatever our mind is telling us. I can't help it. I can't help I fell in love with that person. I can't help I can't help the way I feel. I just feel this way, and we blame everything on that. But God says, you can decide what you think. You can decide who you're going to fall in love with, what you're going to do, and how you're going to feel about a certain situation. The scriptures teach us this. Whatever is noble, whatever is true, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, what does he say? Think about it. God, you mean you're telling me what to think? Yeah, that's what God is saying. I'm telling you exactly what to think. Do you think God would ask you to do something that wasn't possible? God says you can control your thoughts beyond the mundane, beyond the negativity of life, beyond the depressing things, beyond the stressful things, beyond the worrying, beyond the discouraging things. God says you can decide. You can use the power of your personal ability to decide what you want to think about. We make jokes about telling people, "Oh, just go to your happy place." A happy place is like an imaginary world. Kids go to the happy place and meet their imaginary friend and things like that. But there is a place in God that is beyond some childhood fantasy of a happy place. It's a joyful place in Him. And it's a place in which we, according to what Paul wrote in Colossians 3:2, he says, set your mind on heavenly things. King James Version, I think, says, set your affection on things above. Not on earthly things. Think about it. Early last week, I had this thought. And the thought was that, we sing songs like we used to sing songs like When We All Get to Heaven. And I realized I hadn't talked about heaven in a while. I hadn't even really thought about heaven in a while. And it triggered me, and I've been thinking about heaven all week. Honey, I'm not going to die. Not this week. Not going to go to heaven yet. But I've been thinking about it. And the thought came to me that back in 2005, the year I had a massive stroke, almost died in 2005. I owned my insurance agency. I was very successful in insurance. And I delighted in winning sales contests, and I won many of them. I was so competitive. I'm like, I'm going to win this contest. And it didn't matter to me that I was winning a trip to a resort, which I'd done. It didn't matter to me. I was winning fancy meals and all this kind. I just wanted to win to win. And I was on schedule in 1 year from the day I had my stroke. Guess where I was going? Tahiti. Anybody ever, probably Julie Raines has probably been to Tahiti. She's been everywhere. But I was going to Tahiti. I didn't care about Germany or whatever. I'd like to go to those places, but I'm going to Tahiti. And you know what I was telling all my friends? I'm going to Tahiti. And they're like, well, I'm going to Disney World. I'm like, yeah, well, that's cool. And I got thinking about this the other day, that when we're excited about going somewhere, we talk about it. And I haven't talked about heaven enough. And so all week long, I've been thinking about heaven. I've been thinking about that city called the New Jerusalem that's coming down from heaven out of God. John the Revelator talked about it, and he talked about a lot of things about the New Jerusalem, and it reminded me of the worst sermon that I ever had. David and I grew up with a great pastor and preacher, Pastor Ellis. He was a dynamic speaker, but when he was gone, we had two other speakers. His grandfather, who was okay, and he would preach on Sunday nights. We had this other guy who preached on Sunday mornings, who was like the most boring preacher you ever heard in your whole life. And I remember one Sunday morning, a sermon I'll never forget. He preached on the 12 gates of the New Jerusalem. And I was a real watcher. And he said, today I'm going to preach about the 12 gates of the New Jerusalem. I'm like, dear Lord, have mercy. 12 gates. And then I looked at my watch, and 40 minutes later, he was only on the 4th gate. I'm like, we're going to be here till 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And so finally, after about the 6th gate, he's like, well, we'll have to leave the other 6 for another time. I don't know why I remember that sermon. Has stuck in my head. But I'm like, God, I want to think about heaven. I want to think about the gates of the New Jerusalem, and I'm going to talk about it. You know, people, you talk about heaven, people look at you like, get off your cloud, boy. What are you doing? This is real life. Yeah, well, the Apostle Paul says that the invisible things are the real things. And the real things are the fake things. All the money you could have made, that's fake. All the time you could have spent in prayer and developed your relationship, that's real. It's real. And it all falls under your personal ability to decide. God, help me decide to think about you. Help me decide to dig those thoughts out of my brain. Years ago, I watched a man. We were standing outside somebody's house. He looked at the homeowner and he said, you know, you've got a problem with moles. And as we watched, we could see the ground moving, and there was a mole digging a hole, digging a tunnel right through this really gorgeous lawn. And the guy said, watch this. And he took a big old knife out of his pants, and he went over to that spot and he dug a little hole, and he reached in there and he grabbed this mole out behind the ears, and right in front of us, he strangled that mole. And he said, you got to be really careful when you do this because they bite horribly. And he killed that mole with his bare hands. Dug it right out of the ground. Brenda's cringing because she saw it happen. Didn't you? So I'm telling all these old stories from way, way back. She saw it happen. As a matter of fact, it was on her mom's lawn. And a guy named Don, remember Don? Dug it out of the lawn. Dug a mole out of her lawn. And I was thinking about that, and I'm like, God, I need to dig some of these thoughts out of my brain. Because your word says I can think on good things, I can think on just things because of my ability to decide. Oh, it's a power. I want to challenge you today to go home and say, God, I'm going to think about good things. I'm going to talk about good things. I'm I'm going to Disney World. I'm going to tell everybody, no, I'm not going to Tahiti, I'm going to heaven.
Amen.
And when I get to heaven, we'll talk about it after church. Close with this thought. I had one of the great privileges in my life was to stand behind the sacred desk, the pulpit that colonial preacher George Whitefield preached at in Savannah, Georgia. I had the opportunity to officiate at our daughter's wedding there in Savannah, Georgia. It was a historic building. It's exactly like it was back in the 18th century, I think before 1750. And the fact that George Whitefield, who I have great admiration for, a great, great preacher, he and John Wesley, maybe the greatest preachers that this country has ever seen, both British, but they came to the United States a lot. George Whitefield had made 13 transatlantic crossings, and it just blew my mind that I was standing behind the pulpit that he preached at. And I remember after this wedding ceremony, a group of people were standing around, and a woman came up to me and she said, "Pastor, I loved your little talk." She said, "Thank you so much for that. It really opened my mind to a lot of things in my own marriage." And I'm thinking, yeah, that's great, because I'm thinking, well, maybe there was something she heard. She said that God kind of love you talked about really opened my mind. I'm going to go home and I'm going to divorce the critter. She didn't call him a critter. And I'm like, I'm trying to say, that's not what I meant. And I wanted to rebuke her and whatever, but too many people around, I couldn't say what I wanted to say. And it just popped into my head this morning, and I'm like, our minds, we can make decisions, bad decisions, we can twist things, and we can find the will of God in just about anything we want. But God's like, I want you to make right decisions. And you'll make right decisions if you start thinking right thoughts. Are you in the valley of decision today? If you are, first fill your mind with right thoughts. Don't think about things that, when the Apostle Paul wrote and he said, think on things that are just. It tears you up when you think about things that are unjust. You think about injustice. Yes. It can mess with your mind. It can make you want to get revenge. It can make you hate. It can make you angry. And all of these things. And God, I'm not going to think about. I'm going to use the power of my personal ability to decide to think about good things. Would you do that with me this week?
We're going to do verses 1 and 2 of Be Thou My Vision, and then I'm going to turn it back to Ed, and if he wants to do another, we'll do the last verse. Be Thou my vision, O Lord of my heart, not me all else to be, save that Thou art. Thou my best thought, by day or by night, waking or sleeping, thy presence, my life. Be thou my wisdom, and thou my true word. I ever with thee, and thou with me, Lord. Thou my great Father, I thy true Son. Thou in me dwelling, and I with thee one.
They say that say after a death or divorce, you should never make major decisions for about 6 months to a year. Just don't make... See, we have this phenomenal power to make decisions. Good decisions and bad decisions. And in that decision, possibilities die. And it's good to sometimes kill off the possibilities that we know are not good for us, but we kind of keep them alive like a dangerous snake in a cage that might get out and kill somebody. We keep these possibilities alive, and we're like, well, I'm not really going to do that, but the possibility is there. We need to decide things going to die. It's like, I'm never going there. And when you start filling your mind with right thoughts, then you can make right decisions. I challenge you today to go home and examine your thoughts. Examine how often you think about heaven. I challenge you to think about heaven this week. How many of you would think about heaven this week? Think about it. One more.
High King of heaven, my victory won. May I reach heaven's joys, oh bright heaven's sun. Heart of my own heart, whatever befall, still be my vision, oh ruler of all. Heart of my own heart, heart of my own heart, whatever befall, still be my vision, oh ruler of all.
God bless you. I'm going to ask Julie Raines if she would dismiss us in prayer this morning.